bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on SiriusXM FC.
Welcome into Game Week on SiriusXM, where each week we take a deep dive into the USL Super League, bringing you the top stories from across the league. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Marion Crowder. I'm Anna Witte. Well, we have a fun one for you. Matchday 25 saw 12 different goals. We're discussing the Golden Boot race that is heating up, and we are joined by Dallas Trinity's midfielder, Amber Brooks. Marion, how are you doing? I know you had a busy weekend. I know you've already had a busy week.
Things are good. We are back in full swing of being back in the booth. Open Cup is in full swing for all my soccer lovers. I will say I felt like this year's Open Cup opening round did not have near as many cup sets as last year's. Yeah, last year's I was like, oh my gosh, like you can't even not watch it for a second. This year it was like everything was like so close, but nothing actually like cool or fun happened.
It's giving March Madness, right? Like it kind of very similar. Like March Madness doesn't have these crazy storylines that we've seen in the past this season.
Right. No, I totally agree. So, but that was fun. It's always fun to get into Open Cup because the games are broadcast on YouTube and we all have a great time. I'm going to tell the audience what everyone that watched the Open Cup learned about me. I'm curious to know, Anna, if you have any musical talents. But it was a 4-0 game in like the 23rd minute or something, right? So at this point, yes, we're going to give credit. We're going to talk about the game, but at the same time, we're going to have some fun. And so I asked for my introduction to be Marion Crowder, first chair flute player moving forward. And so myself and Tyler Terrence, we were talking about our musical gifts, and I found out he was a trumpet player. He found out I was not only a flute player, but first chair flute. And that's how that came about. So I'm curious to know.
Wow.
If you have musical abilities.
Impressive. I didn't know this about you.
I feel like you play the piano. Like
I have a really good piano story. That's funny that you bring this up. So I was in kindergarten, and there was this girl in my class who was so good at the violin, and I was like, I need to be this girl. I want to be good at the violin. My parents are like, you got to learn how to read music. We got to start in piano. They took me to piano class. I brought this little plastic green piano because my parents were investing in this grand piano when I was 5 years old.
Smart.
And I go to this class. And essentially, the teacher, we do the class, she takes me out and tells my parents, I'm going to say this nicely, your daughter has no future in music. And that was it. That was my music career.
I mean, you were
like, I don't live that down.
One and done. Like you were one and done.
My future was sport, and this, definitely not music, but I still hope one day I can maybe play a little something. Piano would be cool. Flute's that's pretty stellar. That's a cool.
Yeah. I mean, I like not to brag, but like
maybe you could do like our show open. We need a song for a show open, and we can collab.
As long as I feel like flute is not, I feel like honestly it would only be funny if you had like a live shot of me actually doing it. Right. Like that would be what actually makes it. So I don't
people
know.
are like aware who's doing it.
Can you give the people an update on your Game of Thrones, please?
I honestly don't have a more recent update. I've been so busy with soccer. You were calling Open Cup this weekend and
MLS. I get it.
Super League. I was calling MLS. I've been watching a lot of that, trying to get caught up in MLS this season. So I haven't dove in, but tonight, hold me to it. Next Tuesday, we'll have this conversation and I will have an update. But what we do have an update on right now, Marion, is this Golden Boot race that is heating up in the Super League. Let's dive into it. I mean, through Matchday 25, we've got Dallas's Allie Thornton and Fort Lauderdale's Addie McCain tied for 9 goals. Right now, Thornton's shooting 68% shooting accuracy, which is really impressive for the forward. And then we've got Carolina's Mia Corbin and Fort Lauderdale's Jasmine Hamid tied for 7th, right underneath those two players. But we've got 8 to 10 games, depending on what club you're playing for, left in the Super League. So who else do you expect to start converting goals to really test for this Golden Boot winner trophy?
You know, I was looking at that, and I was just going off obviously like the recent film that we watched and names that we're hearing and seeing often. And I was trying to see if the numbers matched, right? And so just to throw it out there, names that we've been hearing recently on the score sheet: Gianna Gorley, right? Mia Corbin, obviously Allie Cook. And then a trend started. You take Mia Corbin out of that, and then I was like, okay, a trend is starting. You add Cam Lancaster in there. And I'm like, wow, these are all players who have just recently joined the Super League. So, first and foremost, this is my cry and my plea to the managers. Please keep these players in the Super League so we can see what they look like with a full season under their belt. But then I wanted to just crunch the numbers and separate, fall season, spring season. So, I have my little handy dandy post-it note. We love a post-it note.
Love that.
And if you look at it, right, we all know that Addie McCain went off in the fall season. We know that. In the spring season, she's only scored 1 goal, but that is obviously because she's dropped deeper into that 10 role. She's not being asked to score more. She's really leaving that for the wingers, and that's why we're seeing Jasmine Hamid, Shania Gordon, they both have 3 goals apiece in the spring. So I do think that her own teammates can give her a run for her money. I'm not sure that anyone on the Dallas Trinity side, just again, because I don't think that they've had the luxury of being here for a full season, but I'm not sure that anyone on the Dallas Trinity roster can give Allie Thornton a run for her money, because not only did she go off in the fall, she's still going off in the spring. She's already got 4 goals this spring. So she is doing her duty as a 9. But Anna, if I have to just look at it, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 players. Allie Thornton is leading the spring season with 4 goals.
Right.
4 players have 3 goals underneath her, all of which I'm just not sure, outside of Mia Corbin, I'm just not sure can catch Addie and Allie, but it's Jasmine Hamid, Mia Corbin, Gianna Gorley, and Shania Gordon.
I'm going to throw one out there, Marion. And you actually touched on this player last week, and we got some comments in the YouTube that was really happy about you bringing her up. And I agree. It's Tampa Bay's Natasha Flynn. She's had now 4 goals, or sorry, 6 goals on the season. I think she has the potential, if this Tampa Bay side can find that form of consistency in their last bout of the Super League here in the spring. She's a player who I could see rack up a few more and really test for that golden boot race. But for me, if I'm a betting woman, if we're going back to stocks and investing like last week, I'm going with Dallas's Allie Thornton. This Dallas side has had 9 goals in their last 2 games. They haven't conceded a goal. They have found a way to make her that 9 and put her in dangerous spots that I got Allie Thornton winning this golden boot race on March 25th.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard not to pick Allie Thornton. And just to give everybody kind of a glimpse at, if we could, be fancy with graphics and whatnot, like we would probably show you this. Maybe we'll get there. But just to give you a glimpse of what we're looking at, Allie Thornton, Addie McCain, obviously tied for 9. Jasmine Hamid, Mia Corbin tied for 7, right? So that is not outside the realm of possibility for either of those players. Right. Then you look at Cecile Flew, then you look at Natasha Flint, then you look at Carly Jamona, all tied for 6 goals.
3 Tampa girls.
Season. Also not outside the realm of possibility. So I am not mad at all that you bring up Natasha Flint. Obviously, we'll probably get into the Tampa Bay Spokane game later, but I thought despite the loss, she was still phenomenal. And again, they are playing with confidence. They're playing with swag. And I'm not mad at your underdog. I'm not mad at all.
We'll see. Time will tell. We got 8 to 10 games, depending on what club you're rooting for so far this season. Spokane is another team who is taking care of business on the West Coast. In fact, they traveled to the East Coast this past week. They played 3 games in 7 days and now have 2 wins and a tie. An adjustment that they made is moving forward Emma Jaskinek a little bit deeper into the midfield. Spokane has 5 goals in 3 of those matches, and one of our favorite goalkeepers in Hope Heisey has been such a consistent force in goal. 9 points out of the playoff spot Spokane is in. What's an important aspect of their game that has to stay consistent if they want to be in one of those spots?
Great question. So I was on the call for Tampa Bay and Spokane, and one of the things that Joe Johnson said to us very transparently was, we have limited the knowledge that we're giving them. And she didn't mean it in the way that I'm saying it. She meant it as in, we want them to be able to digest enough information to make smart decisions and not get overwhelmed with the information and the details that we're presenting them. For example, it could be something as easy as condensing the scouting report. It can also be something as easy as in practice and in training, when they're saying, hey, make sure you play the back foot. Hey, you need to be two feet wider. Hey, you need to be pushed up in your press just a little bit more. taking those kind of detailed instructions out and presenting to them the why. Here's why we are trying to do this. Here's what, if we approach this correctly, this is the result that it creates. And so Joe Johnson said that they really use the offseason as a reflection point of how they can be a bit more specific by saying less in the way that not only they're giving their scouting reports, but also by the way they're coaching. And I think that has shown up in the way that they're playing, because it feels more free, doesn't it? It feels very much more like they have confidence. They're not afraid to mess up. So my 2 cents would be, from a consistency standpoint, keep doing that, because we're seeing that this is a group of skilled players that we knew they had. And perhaps all of the information, or perhaps just the anxiousness of making a mistake, was causing them to really not play in the way that we thought this roster would play in. I would also add that, and you and I talked about this offline, but I would also add that the international window and missing players like Amina Ekic was very transparent for them. You insert her back into the lineup with the superb addition that has been Ali Cook, and they have been flying.
Spokane is in a really nice position right now. And you bring up Ali Cook, who's one of those players that I feel like if she had been in the Super League from the jump, she could be in that golden boot race. Maybe we'll see it in 2025, 2026. My favorite Joe Johnson quote after this match in particular, or the last match where they tied Fort Lauderdale, is these are the kind of games where you see what we're made of. We've stayed compact, we've stayed disciplined, and we showed what we can go toe to toe with anyone. And that describes this team perfectly at this point in the season. So really excited for this West Coast side in Spokane's longevity, their consistency, and what they can do in this final push of the spring season. Well, we've got plenty more on the other side of the show. Don't go anywhere. It's Game Week on Sirius XM.
Bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on Sirius XM FC.
Welcome back to Game Week on Sirius XM. We are getting you ready for another fun weekend of Super League. It's match day 26 kicking off on Saturday. We got Tampa Bay visiting Brooklyn at 6 o'clock Saturday night. And then we have Carolina hosting Dallas at 7 o'clock on Saturday night. So make sure you get multiple screens ready for Super League play. Let's start with Tampa Bay visiting Brooklyn. Brooklyn added this new addition in forward midfielder Grace Philpotts. In between seasons, she's playing a little bit of a higher role, where Mackenzie George has now been asked to play in a more of a left back, wing back role for Brooklyn this season. What do you like about that partnership? Or what adjustments maybe could head coach Jess Silva make to get the best out of both of those players?
I like that question. People probably didn't hear it, but as you brought up Brooklyn, I just let out a sigh, because I say that to say, I'm going to start off on a positive note. So much we talked last week about how heavy it is for that locker room right now, right? And you and I both know this. When you're not scoring, things get heavy very, very fast. So to break that cycle is kind of just like a, cool. I know that they did not get the full 3 points, but at the same time, you're stepping onto a positive note. And even more of a positive note is this addition of Grace Philpotts. Now, I watched Grace Philpotts throughout her entire collegiate career, called many a games at Kentucky.
Yeah.
She is one of the most intelligent and vision-oriented distributors of the ball that I think have come across the college game, at least in the SEC. She is extremely consistent, which I think this Brooklyn team needs right now, but she's also got this dynamic ability to evade pressure. And I like her and Mackenzie George on the same side. Now, the reason I like that is because I think that right now Jess Silva is saying, hey, we understand that the majority of our attack is going to come from this left-hand side. My people on the right-hand side, it is your job to finish, right? You are going to be more of our timed runs. That being said, and obviously we're not privy to the game plan, so we can only assume. I like it because it's a lot to deal with on the left-hand side. And that's basically just saying these two are better than your two. And I'm good with that. I like the confidence. Yeah. Now, my addition to that would be, I would often like to see them swapped, right? So we're seeing Mackenzie George in a deeper position than Grace Philpotts. I typically would revert that and have Mackenzie George play her normal, her normal left wing position, and have Grace Philpotts be a fullback. But if you're not going to do that, I would like for the players to have more interchange between them. I think if they can do that, because you mentioned it, Anna, one of the great parts was that these are both workhorses, and perhaps that's why we're seeing Mackenzie George in a deeper role. But I would also argue that you could be a workhorse on higher parts of the field, right? And so
Yeah.
I would like to see this kind of just evolution of them interchanging left wing, left back, whether that's pressure on the other back line or whether that's just to evade pressure on the left hand side and get the attack going. I think it could be really dynamic.
Yeah. One piece though is Phil Potts is much newer to this club
Very
than
true.
Mackenzie George. And a lot of times the defensive principles are sometimes what takes the longest to get
Very
down
true.
pat. George might have that down pat, and Silva's not fully convinced that Phil Potts can take care of the defensive responsibilities at this point of the season, would be the only devil's advocate I would see, because I agree with you. It's a Mackenzie George. She's the one who has provided them the most of their attack in the fall. So why wouldn't you want her back in that role?
I also think too that there is, and it speaks to the goal that they scored, right? There is something to be said for being the team's star and being kind of that one that you point out on a scouting report and say, hey, we cannot allow her to operate in this half of the field. Well, if you bring her back out of that pressure, right, you allow her to have a teammate to work with and find the open spaces. Well, now all of a sudden they've got to deal with Grace Philpotts. And what does that open up for Mackenzie George? Maybe a
Overlapping run.
delayed run into the central areas in which she can pick up the balls like she did to score. So I see both sides of it. No doubt about it. I'm not sure, to your point, I'm not sure if it's something that's going to be a forever thing once Grace does get her footing.
Yes.
But I do think it could work, especially now that they've broken through that cycle of not scoring. I'm excited for them to play this weekend.
Yeah, Brooklyn went through a 4-game scoreless streak, and they get a goal against DC. Still at the top of the table. I mean, they're right behind Fort Lauderdale, but both Fort Lauderdale and Brooklyn have 32 points. And then you look at Dallas. They've scored the most goals with 30. They've conceded the least amount of goals with 16. They've got the most experience and consistency on their squad and all three lines, and their newcomers have been really big additions. Dallas will travel to Carolina to take on a team who put 4 goals with 3 different goal scorers against Lexington last week. That's exactly what head coach Phil Pohl needed from his side. However, is this 4-goal win against Lexington show you enough to go, okay, Carolina's got it going again? No?
But here's my caveat to that. I never thought they lost it, right? I think a lot of people that like watch this show or that watch the games are like, oh my gosh, what's happening with Carolina? Like they were never, yeah, they had some performances that were not up to standard, right? But we do hold this Carolina Ascent team to quite a high standard, mind you. I never really thought that they had a problem to deal with. I thought it was just a matter of getting the rhythm back under their feet and getting a little bit of confidence with some of the new additions.
Yeah.
But I say no because to me, this was more of a Lexington squabble than it was a Carolina win. Yes, they did some good things. And yes, they capitalized on mistakes. And that's what you want as a manager. But I don't think that we can get away from that match without mentioning the mistakes and the mistakes and the mistakes on the back line for Lexington.
Yeah.
So all that to say, I think if you are one of those people who for some reason are like, oh, Carolina, they're in a bit of a rough spot, they're going through a rut right now. If that's you and you're not convinced because of the performance that Lexington showed in this 4-0 defeat, then I would highly suggest you tune in to the Dallas match because that is where you will get your answer, I assure you.
It'll be a really exciting one between Carolina and Dallas because both teams are teams who like to shoot. Dallas loves to score. We've seen that the last few weeks. Carolina might be back on track with those 4 goals against Lexington. And right now, everyone is still in this race. DC, Lexington, they're at the bottom of the table right now. Anyone can still make the playoffs. We will let you know when things start to change as we get closer to the playoff positioning. And once we know what the playoff positioning will look like in terms of dates and times. But right now, we've got 2 matches on Peacock this upcoming weekend.
And just to put it in perspective, again, guys, I don't know if y'all are looking at the stats and the standings as we're doing this show. The top 4, Fort Lauderdale, Brooklyn, Carolina, Dallas, are not even a game separated between them.
No.
Okay. So that's what we're working with. Okay.
Yeah. It's a tight one. It's a really tight, like the fact that the two top teams are tied for the same amount of points and that Spokane is just 9 points out of a playoff position
That's insane.
means you got to watch, right? You should tune in. We've got some good games for you down the stretch. Don't go anywhere. We have a really good interview with Dallas's midfielder, Amber Brooks. She talks about her time in other leagues, her decision to come to the Super League, and what might be next in her career. Don't go anywhere. This is Game Week on Sirius XM.
Bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on Sirius XM FC.
Welcome back to Game Week on Sirius XM. We are now joined by Dallas Trinity midfielder Amber Brooks. Amber, thank you so much for joining the show. We've really enjoyed watching your talent this season, your team's talent this season. Dallas is in a fantastic spot after match day 25. But we've been watching you for a while, Amber. Your time in the NWSL in particular. You were a free agent after the 2024 season in the NWSL, and you had made a comment that you weren't necessarily getting interest from other NWSL clubs. So there's other options to go. You could have left the country, played in other clubs. Why was the Super League and their first year where you wanted to go next?
So I actually, have said this story, but I think I might have been one of the first players to kind of have a heads up that the Super League was starting. I actually caught up with Amanda Vandervoort. I've known her since I was a teenager, and I was actually in Florida for preseason training back in 2022, and we caught up coffee, and that's when she had just returned stateside and taken the job as USL Super League commissioner. And so we were kind of bouncing ideas off each other and just getting the, informal, like, oh, we're thinking a fall to spring calendar and everything else. And so, from that moment on, I was kind of like, oh, cool. Like, it sounds like there's another, pro women's soccer league that's going to be starting in the US soon. And, so, approaching free agency, like I said, there wasn't, I was very particular in what I wanted for this stage of my career, knowing I'm at the end stages, and I wasn't in a position where I was just going to sign it for any club for any amount of money. Like, it had to make sense presently, and then also be building toward what I wanted in the future, not just for myself, but for my fiance and even our dog. So, I was going to be picky at this stage of my career. So, when it didn't work out situationally wise with NWSL club, I knew I wasn't going to go back to Europe. I loved playing in Germany, but again, I have too many roots stateside. And that just wasn't, where I wanted to play next. So I honestly contemplated retirement before, thinking, oh, I'd go overseas, and I'd done Australia. But so I'd obviously kept the Super League in the back of my mind. I kept up in touch with Amanda, and she had recommended a couple of the club ownerships. And so basically I actually reached out to Trip Neal on LinkedIn, and I actually was kind of positioned it as more of like hey, do you need a GM or an assistant GM, like, versus actually the playing side. And he wrote back to me and was like, oh, actually, we just hired a GM, Chris Petroselli, but like, he asked, like, do you want to play? And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like, I'd never played under Chris or like really worked with him, but obviously knew of him from the college game and his time with Chicago. So I was like, all right, like, I trust him. I know he knows his stuff. And then, yeah, really, I think, the ownership group, the Neals, just really sold me on what they were doing. And I loved the family feel that they were all committed to it and involved. And they just really, it made sense for the next step or really the final step of my career. And then working toward my ambitions for what I have next, they were very welcoming in terms of, helping me, position myself to potentially get a GM type role in the future, whether it's in this league or another women's league. So really, all the stars kind of aligned. And yeah, I just really happy with my decision thus far. And, really happy again with where the team sits right now.
We are happy with your decision thus far. We are very glad that you did not retire. I feel like I speak for a lot of us when we say that this league, especially in its inaugural year would not be the same without a presence such as yours. But I am interested. You have been, as Anna mentioned, you have played in all kinds of different leagues that have very different structures, right? And you have this GM mindset about you. What do you think could make the Super League different than the rest of the leagues in the world and in our country?
Well, actually, when I was finished my master's in May, and my final project was, kind of your choice, and I wrote about basically the unique opportunity that Super League has with being franchise-based ownership and also having the academy contracts running fall to spring. Obviously, at that point, the NWSL had not quite eliminated its draft, so that was a unique aspect of the Super League. And just the fact, again, you have this youth to pro pathway that doesn't exist in the NWSL quite yet. And then you have the opportunity to kind of, not be a feeder league, but you're seeing our team, take advantage of loan players coming from the NWSL. I think you've got players on our team who probably aspire, whether it's in the NWSL or maybe bigger European teams. Our club is in a position to make transfer fees and benefit from that. So I just think, again, running along the international calendar, I had some experience in Germany with that and really enjoyed that. I think having 2 1-month breaks in winter and summer, just in terms of from an athletic standpoint, it just is best performance wise. You can enjoy the break without being like, oh my gosh, I can take a week and then I have to kill myself before preseason. And it just, you can actually enjoy the break knowing that you're not going to get that out of shape by taking a week or 2 off, because then you ramp back up and get into it. So, I just think there's enough unique aspects of the Super League. The fact that, again, until this year, like this was the first guaranteed contract that I actually signed in 12 years. And I knew that I wasn't going to be traded. And if they wanted to cut me, they, had to pay me out the rest of my contract. So to be saying that again, like to be offering that in year 1 and not year 12, 13, however years it may be, is I think a very positive aspect.
I would venture to say too, the fact that you have this guarantee also makes you play maybe with a little bit more freedom, and you're a lot more comfortable knowing you're going to be in that position. And I also love that you reached out on LinkedIn. Like every good story starts in the DMs. That's fantastic. You obviously knew what you wanted to do and what your end goal eventually is. But when you look at this year in particular, whether it's on the field or off the field, how has the Super League challenged you differently than other leagues?
I just think I come in with like a unique perspective of, again, like there's been a couple articles where I entered the NWSL obviously in year 2 technically, but it's a growing brand new league. And I think for me, I had to shift my mindset again to like, hey, this is a brand new league. Like there's going to be growing pains. And not everything's going to be perfect. I had to accept that most of my teammates, or basically everyone, I think I'm the second oldest player in the league, maybe, I don't know, but I knew that everyone was going to be younger and not have as much experience, and that I was going to have to consistently be kind of that mentor and provide that leadership. And that's a challenge in and of itself, because you have to show up every day and be a very consistent player and be someone that, when times are tough, that you can be relied upon. Whereas, in the NWSL, when I was, more of an average middling player, like I didn't have that dependency on myself. It was just kind of to each their own. So I think it's a bit more, again, like the little things leadership wise, having more conversations with the coaches and being involved in day-to-day things that, kind of were taken care of in the past, or I didn't really have involvement in, and those can add up. So I think it's just kind of finding that balance of, first and foremost, I'm a player and I want to maximize my playing experience, but also embrace the fact that because, I'm an employee of Dallas and they can run things more or less how they want, I'm in a unique position to take steps towards my future. I think just embracing the fact that I am the oldest player on our team. I have the most experience for the most part. And, I need to bring that and show that and mentor as many of my teammates as I can.
Well, it doesn't show. And I have said multiple times on this show how your presence specifically allows, I think, for much more of what your team can do on the attacking side of the ball than not. So I'm going to give you credit, even if you're not going to give yourself credit. But not only are you still a player first and foremost, you're dog mom.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Henley Rover, come on over on Instagram if anyone is out there looking for the cutest. Well, you say it's a standard Australian Labradoodle, but like the pictures I see, I'm like, there's actually like nothing standard about this dog.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, he's probably like a giant Australian Labradoodle at this point. He
huge.
keeps growing, even though he's full grown. Yeah, no, I think first and foremost, honestly, I am a dog mama. My fiance and I don't even call each other by our names. We call each other mama and papa.
Same. Mom and
Uh,
dad. We're mom and
yeah,
dad over here. I've got a German
yeah.
Shepherd. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, but he is the biggest blessing in our lives, and there's just like nothing better than coming home, whether you won, lost, tied, played well, or didn't, and he greets you the same either way, and is
Yeah.
just and he's been able to come to quite a few of the games. He sits in the end zone and he'll be just laying down quite horizontal and not really overly amused, even when we are scoring a lot of goals.
So
So
he checked out, like
yeah,
completely checked out.
yeah,
He's just
Yeah.
like, I'm so done. I'm
yeah.
just gonna lay here. I love that.
So fun. That's so cute. I'm not a big, Marion's our residential dog person on the show. I love a good pug. I'm just not a big dog person. For whatever reason, I have a fear, but love that. I want to go back to what you made a comment about knowing Amanda Vandervoort for since you were a teenager. How
Mhm.
did you guys cross paths? How'd you meet?
So I played, state ODP for Eastern Pennsylvania, and then obviously like Region One ODP, and then youth national team. And we had a really special state administrator, but then she was head of Region One. Her name was Charlotte Moran. She actually passed back in 2009 when I was a senior in high school. But Charlotte was like one of the pioneers of women's soccer in the US. Like she helped with the 91 US women's national team that won that World Cup, helped with hosting the 99 World Cup. And she was just like, yeah, like just a huge champion for women's soccer nationwide. But then obviously I got to know her through Eastern Pennsylvania and Region One, and my mom actually became good friends with her. So we were close, and then I would just be involved with ODP and then be going to the NSCAA conventions. And Amanda and I just met really through Charlotte. And I think she was working maybe MLS at the time. So she'd be at those conventions. And I think even from that age, I probably had like more of an interest in like attending the convention, not just because I was winning an award, but like, oh, it's cool around to be around, like to be around these women soccer coaches and admins. And like, I think I already kind of had a taste for like, oh, I love this game so much. Like I want to even beyond my playing days, like stay involved in some capacity. That wasn't probably a coach. So anyway, we met really as a teenager through Charlotte. And then obviously she suffered from pancreatic cancer. So through that, and even like her funeral service, we met there. And then just kind of staying in touch as someone again, like I think Amanda's been a huge champion for women's soccer, not just in the US, but across the world, and has just had these amazing job titles and roles. So again, I think having known her and even throughout this process, even before I knew I was coming to the Super League, considered her a mentor, someone that I could reach out like, hey, like I'm thinking this, what do you think? Like what educationally or certificates, like what do you think would position me to achieve what I want post soccer? And yeah, so I think that honestly was a huge part of my decision too, was trusting her and trusting that, yes, she's the commissioner. She's theoretically on the other side of the table, player commissioner, but I knew that like I could trust that she would have, the players' care and perspective first and foremost, and that it was going to be a very player centric league.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I have played for enough teams in the NWSL that had coaches that were fired and were in the Sally Yates reports. And so I knew again, things aren't going to be perfect. Things come up, whatever it happens, it's the real world. But I trusted that, she would put players first and foremost and be looking out for our best interest.
I want to go into the locker room just real quick because I feel like when we see you guys, obviously when we watch the tape and it's such an intellectual style of soccer, it also can be very gritty, very in your face. But I want you to peel back the layers for everyone and just kind of describe what this Dallas Trinity locker room is like.
Yeah, it's really unique because again, we really, especially with like the loan players that we've added, like, and they are all internationals, like, so
Right.
we really run the gamut in terms of, we've got our academy players that are in a separate locker room because
Yeah.
they're 18. And we always are like, can they come in? Like all that. But no, I think they like you talk about like Celie Strawn. I'm so glad she's going to UNC. I'm obviously biased, but like just this what she's been able to contribute, like either in a starting role or off the bench, like it's just unbelievable. And I'm like, I tell her all the time, I'm like, I'm so jealous that you are experiencing this. Like I would have killed for that when I was your age.
Same.
And then yeah, we've got a lot of like flair. Honestly, I'm a pretty boring locker room person. I am not the DJ. I am like very much like have my routine and I'm pretty like fixated on being chill because I exert so much energy and kind of have to communicate and be a powerful force on the field that I kind of keep myself loading as long as possible until it's time. Even in warm-ups, I'm like, I hate warming up. Like I wish I
Yeah.
could just like do some band work, couple jogs, and then like
Good. I'm
the
out.
field. Like I'm like I don't
Right.
want to overexert myself in warm ups. I need this energy for the game. So yeah, everyone kind of does their own thing, but we definitely like mesh well. Like we have a pretty good playlist, and I think we have a good combination of like people being able to zone in and do what they want, but also having enough like getting pumped up together, and the coaches kind of know the routine. They don't over speak or fill our brains with too much stuff. They just trust that we've put in the work during the week and just kind of reminders.
Yeah, I feel like we talk about it on the show a good bit. Every year we update our boards and the girls just get younger and younger and younger. And I'm like, wow, we are getting older and older and older. So I feel that. But just off time when you're not playing game, when you're not training, are you in a room with Chris Petroselli trying to pick his brain about being a general manager? What do your off days look like right now?
Yeah, so it kind of varies. I would say in the summer and beginning of the season, preseason, I was in the office more often, but as it's gone on and the travel gets a bit,
Sure.
I am one of those people that even more than the physical side of like needing rest, I just need like mentally and like socially to be away from people. Like I love being part of
We
a team.
understand. Don't
Yeah.
worry.
Like
Yeah.
I love being a part of a team, but I need like my downtime, my alone time away from the team. Like 25 girls is a lot.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I usually actually make it a point to go to the office like 15, 20 minutes earlier than I need to in the morning. And that's kind of when I sit down and talk to Chris and what's happening around the world of women's soccer and everything else. So yeah, it looks different on the road. We obviously can catch up more. But honestly, again, like they're very like adamant that I'm a player first and I need, my recovery time and I need my alone time. So they don't really get on me. It's kind of like at my initiative. So yeah, but heading into this summer, obviously, there's a bit more emphasis on, hey, like, now we have year one down, like we have an idea of the league and what quality of players you need. Like, so I'm hoping that I can play a little bit of a role in revamping our roster ahead of next season.
Cool. Why right now do you feel like your team, the last two games, you've scored 9 goals and let in 0? So, like,
Hmm.
why right now, defensively and offensively, are the two in sync?
I mean, I don't think there's really one answer. I think it's hard to pinpoint. I think our first two games of the season, I would say we had a very good winter preseason in terms of the work we were putting in, just physically, the fitness levels we were able to get to, and then, the scrimmages that we had. So I think for us, it was more disappointing. Our first two games, you're kind of like, what the heck? Like we just had such a good preseason. Like why? But I think again, like even though we had the 14 games in the fall, you have a break. Like I think we just needed still a couple of games to get back in gear and implement. Again, we had enough new players join and a few players leave. So
Hmm.
I think we were a little like jumped the gun and didn't give ourselves enough grace maybe in the first couple of games. And then yeah, it just clicks. Like honestly, I am still shocked at how much it has clicked the last two games. Like because Brooklyn is obviously one of the top teams, and we lost to them the 2 times in the fall. And I mean, even in the game, I'm there like, is this really happening? Like
Right.
I just respect them as an opponent so much that I was like, I mean, really, I think they're the most like top to bottom. Like they have the best combination of skill, but they are fighters too. So I was like, this is weird. Like, is this really, like, have we finally caught our luck, or are we like just clicking finally? So again, I think for us, we knew that we had the potential to perform like we have the last 2 games and put in that many goals and, defend well. But for us, it's always been consistency that has maybe not been there. So again, that's our biggest. We know we're not going to win every game 6-0, 3-0, like, but can we consistently perform at a high level so that we're still winning 1-2, like, so I think that's for us been the bigger issue. And our main focus is that can we consistently string together the runs that a Brooklyn and a Fort Lauderdale, where they, are going unbeaten for 8-9 games and getting mostly wins out of those. That's, what we are aiming for at this juncture.
Yeah, I mean, we love the parity in the Super League and the fact that you don't know week in and week out what you're going to get. Because top to bottom in this league, it's been really fun to watch. And you in particular, like we've said, thank you for joining the show and best of luck this weekend against Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's version of Game Week. You can catch us every single Wednesday on the SiriusXM app, or you can tune in to us on USL's YouTube page. Make sure to comment, leave a review, let us know who you would like to hear from, and enjoy the games this weekend. We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to USL Super League Game Week on SiriusXM FC.